Welcome to Inspiring Women with Laurie McGraw. I am your host, Laurie McGraw. I have spent the past 30 years in leadership, and over the years, I've come to learn one thing. Women need women, and not just any women, but inspiring women. Tune in every week to hear from women at the pinnacle of their careers and from others who are just starting out. Episodes can be found at inspiringwomen.show or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening, and I hope you will be inspired. This is Inspiring Women, and I am Laurie McGraw. Today I'm speaking with Julia Chang. She's a senior sales director at Skyworks Solutions. Skyworks is an American semi-conductor company. It's in Irvine, California. We've been hearing a lot about semiconductors with the recent passing of the CHIPS and Science Act in just the other week here in the United States. And Julia is in Taipei City in Taiwan. And Julia, I'm delighted to be speaking to you today on Inspiring Women.
Thank you, Laurie. It's my great pleasure to have the chance for this interview.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. We're on completely different time zones. It's early morning here as it is evening for you there in Taiwan. So Julia, as we get started today, tell me a little bit about what you do day to day at Skyworks.
Okay. Well, I am the sales director and country manager of Skyworks Taiwan office. And most of my business is about, to handle all of the Taiwanese customers. And I also cover the Southeast Asia. And some of my customers, they also have their factories in China. So day-to-day life, we are, working on all kinds of different projects. And for example, people at home need routers to do all the internet stuff, or people need handsets for communication. And then that's what I am doing the design or close the deal with customers and together with our engineers and my team here.
So it's a very technical profession. So you know a lot about both manufacturing, the details of electronics, and the work that you do. And you've been at Skyworks for a dozen years or so. So Julia, just give us a little bit of your background. How did you come into this profession and being such a technical profession?
Oh, okay. This is a great topic, and let's see where we started. I think first of all, when I was younger, actually I love both literature and mathematics. And then why I decided to jump into science and engineering. The trigger point is actually from some science fiction novels. I when I was about like 13 or 14 years old. And my father introduced me some science fiction written by a Hong Kong writer. His name is Ni Kwang. He actually just passed away, I think, last month. And he has a leading actor named Wesley. And that person, he worked with the aliens, and he resolved all kinds of mysteries in the world. And he can fight like a 007 and very knowledgeable like Indiana Jones. So yeah, so it's a little bit a long while ago, but that's really the starting point that he was my super idol. And then, I told myself I want to be like this guy when I grew up. I want to know more about science, technology, and I want to know more about the Earth and the aliens, etc. So that's where I started to be interested in the so-called science engineering things.
Julia, but was it unusual? So your father supported you and encouraged you. Was it unusual as a young girl to be interested in technology? There's a lot of discussion in the United States about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and wanting to get many more girls into that area. Was that unusual in Taiwan when you were younger?
I think so. I was not aware that was unusual until I grew up. And then when I look back, and then I realized that, my father, he never told me any single word about a girl should be like what or a boy should like what. He just support anything I like. And then, I was less interested in a Barbie doll, and I was more interested in putting together a little car. And he never say anything. And he just support, oh, okay, go ahead to buy whatever you like, no problem. So when I grew up, I never aware that because I am a female or because I'm a girl, so I was supposed to do something else. So I think that's pretty unusual if I look back, like 30 or 40 years ago when I was much younger. Yeah.
So you pursued your master's in technology. And so just give us a little bit of that background as well in terms of how you chose that and then went on to, work at Skyworks. You had a couple other professions before that.
Yeah, so my major was material science, right? So that was an engineering degree. And then later on, I took a scholarship. I went to France to study microelectronics. But then let's backward a little bit. I started to become semi-conductor process engineer when I got my bachelor degree. And at that time, Taiwan, there was a big boom of semiconductor. I think everybody knows TSMC right now. So when I just graduated from university, that's probably when TSMC, they just started a few years. So there are many of my friends, college friends or seniors, they just joined all of those foundry companies. So I naturally joined this semiconductor foundry or process engineer, etc. And then after that, I encountered lots of the brilliant engineers in the company there. And then after a while, I realized that I probably couldn't be a top engineer. There are so many people, they are much smarter or they are so devoted and so passionate about technology. So I told myself, maybe I should try to do something different, still stay in the technology field, but maybe different role, maybe marketing and maybe sales, etc. And then somebody just asked me, are you interested to become a salesperson? So prior to Skyworks, I worked in another company as a sales for a few years. And then someday my friends in Skyworks, he asked me if I'm interested to join Skyworks. So I said, why not? And that's where I took this position.
And you've been there for a dozen years, so it must be working out, I'm sure. And so as you pursued sales and that whole field in a multi-billion-dollar company, how did when you fell into that, you were encouraged to pursue that position? At what point did you realize you were good at it or you liked it because you've been doing it for some time now?
Well, I think probably from pretty early stage, because I love to talk to people. I love to know what people are thinking. And when I was engineer, we talk lots more about engineering issues and how we debug and etc. That's still fun. But then as a salesperson, we need to think more than technology. We need to think about the company strategy and how to close the deal and how to help each other, etc. And then we need to know people's feeling or psychologies, what they are thinking. And then I think it's pretty fun. It's pretty challenging actually. It's totally different from engineering job. And but I do enjoy it. So I don't remember exactly which year. But as time goes by, when I know more people from customers, I enjoy talking to them and discuss things and how to make a win-win solution from both ends and how to achieve several difficulties or close several difficult deals. I enjoy the feeling to overcome challenges.
Yeah. And Julia, in terms of the company and the field of semiconductors and both engineering and the sales, as you describe it, in terms of talking to customers, developing win-win solutions, is this a very male-dominated area or is it quite diverse where you work?
You could say up to today is still a little bit male dominated, because it happened a lot. And when I joined the meeting, I was the only one female in that meeting room. And yeah, I think up to today, female are still minority or less in this field. But as I mentioned from beginning, I was asking myself, through all of the years, what's the difference between a female person employee in this industry and the male? I still believe there is more about individual difference instead of gender difference. That's my personal thinking. That I believe there people, everyone is different. Everyone has their own thinking, their own characteristics, and some people are a little bit more believe in stereotypes, right? For example, men are more determined and less care, for example, and then women are probably more like a mother taking care of kids more. So there are lots of stereotypes when I work in this field. And but I keep telling myself, probably people are like that, but as time goes by, well, need to convince them. I think I personally believe in individual difference instead of gender limitation.
That is just wonderful to hear. And, as I speak to many women on this podcast and outside this podcast, knowing and hearing that the lived professional experience is not limited by your gender is encouraged. It's encouraging. It's encouraging to hear. At some point, you noticed that you were, not a lot of women around the table, as you just said. Who inspired you? Who did you have mentors at the company or outside the company? Clearly, your father was an inspiration to you early on.
I think there are a lot in along the way from when I was a kid till now. If I could figure out some name, I think when I was in university, for example, my university is a pretty famous engineering school in Taiwan, and then there happened a lot that the top 3 students in that class were girls, were females. And so it's more living experience, I could say that way, no matter in university or when I just graduated and joined the science park. Most of the science park employees, engineers, we came from similar university. There are 2 famous universities in Taiwan there. And the friends around me, most of them don't think there is any difference between men and the women. So I don't really need a tutor or mentor to keep telling me that pay attention to my gender. I don't really do that. I think most of my mentors or tutors are focusing more about how to enhance my confidence and how to overcome my fear when I encounter challenges. I think I focus more on this instead of gender challenges, honestly.
That's excellent. That's really encouraging and wonderful, wonderful to hear. Julia, I wanted to sort of zoom out a little bit on the global landscape. So here in the United States, a lot of news and attention to the congressional delegations from the United States heading over to Taiwan. So the news that I read sounds like things are very tense and concerning. And so I'm curious what's happening over in Taiwan, and are these delegation visits concerning to you day to day? How do they impact you in your life in Taiwan?
Actually, there isn't much impact to our daily life. When we grow up, we are already used to the tension between the Taiwan and the other country. And recently, I think recently it's become a little bit more nervous. And the only one difference for me is that I will talk with my friends, and some of us are kind of doing simulation or make some scenario. If really things out of control, do we have plan B about moving to other place or just stay as it is? And yeah, it becomes a topics of talks, but there isn't much change or any impact. We still work and live as usual. Honestly, we don't really. Maybe I don't know from outer world. I know some of my Hong Kong friends, Chinese friends, or even European friends, American friends, they feel it looks very nervous from newspaper and they worry about us. But then in Taiwan, we don't really think so. Yeah.
Well, I hope that there is certainly no need for a plan B. But it's interesting to hear you just talk about, just planning for it and thinking about it. Interesting times. I mean, the global landscape just continues to evolve and change. And certainly you're in a business, semi-conductors, where, just the global economy and dependence on different countries is getting pretty competitive. I mean, that's, certainly the news of the new CHIPS Act here in the U.S., where Skyworks is projected to benefit from. Moving back to you, Julia, as you think about your career trajectory in the, either, what's already happened or where you might be going, can you give us an example of maybe where you took a chance in your career and that effort paid off for you or didn't pay off?
There are actually several turning points, probably two I could talk about is that my first job when I graduated from school is a process engineer in an equipment company. I worked there as a field engineer for 4 years. And then one day, my school seniors, they told me the biggest Taiwanese foundry company, I'm not sure if it's proper to mention the name here, but I think everybody knows who it is, the biggest foundry one. And then my friend invited me to join them. They say they have a new department and they want to enhance more customer service and asked me if I'm interested. And at that time, actually, my job was pretty stable. My boss was pretty nice to me. And I was the first female engineer in that company, pretty remarkable. And yeah, so I worked there for 4 years. I hesitate a little bit, but my friends say to work in a big company would be different. Then I say, okay, well, why not just try? So I changed my job to the biggest foundry company in Taiwan. And I think that really changed my entire view of career. I met so many brilliant talents there and see how they run in a world-class company. And I think that really opened my eyes to the real semiconductor world, a global international company. I didn't stay there for too long, maybe about only 2 years. And then I quit. I went to France to take my master's degree. But then I think that year really refresh my view. And then I think it just opened my eye to the world.
So many women talk about sort of, taking a chance, and it seems probably risky at the time, but then it really does, as you say, open your eyes to all kinds of possibilities. That's awesome. What's the second one? What's the second?
Yeah, the second one is to Skyworks. It's a time when my first son was born. I took a long leave from my prior company and I want to spend some time with my son. And so I think I stayed home for like 5 to 6 months and I really enjoy to be with my little kid. And then someday my friend from Skyworks say, hey, Julia, one of my sales quit and I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so busy. Could you come to help us? And I said, oh, but my son is still very young. And so he's just 6 months and I so enjoy it. And he said, but come on, I'm so busy. Can you just come? And then, honestly, I talked with my husband a little bit, and because the kid was so little, right? But then my husband also encouraged me, and why not? He said, Skyworks is a NASDAQ company, right? A global international technology company. And why don't you just try? And my friend said, oh yeah, you don't need to worry. Sometimes we can work at home. And as long as you can pick up phones, it's okay. So you can just come and then you can still take care of your kid, no problem. I said, oh, okay, and let's go. Then I started. And of course, I actually never get a chance to work at home. In my first few years in Skyworks, every day was so busy. But then that's the time I knew Mark. And then I never regret. It was one of my best choice to join Skyworks 12 years ago.
That is wonderful. And Julia's talking about a mutual friend of ours, Mark Avasian, who introduced us, and I'm so happy about that. Last, questions, Julia, I have for you are just, we've obviously we're hopefully at the tail end. We're in a sort of maybe endemic phase of a pandemic, the global pandemic. Has that changed your perspective of how you approach your work or your career?
Actually, not too much, because I think working in Skyworks at an international company, I was already so used to work remotely because we spend lots of time to talk to California team, to Uber team, or to our French team. So even before pandemic, I'm so used to do online meetings already. And then after pandemic, we even have more online meeting. So I think for career, it's similar. There isn't much change. Yeah, but to life, there is some impact because there are much less business trips, right?
Yeah.
And we don't travel at all, right?
Right.
So yeah, that actually gives more time to read books, to think about things, and then actually we even talk more with our global colleagues because everybody stay home. So we can spend even more time to talk with each other. I think that's one good things there. We communicate even more.
That's terrific. Well, as a global company, all parts of every industry seem to have changed in so many significant ways. Julia, as we close out on Inspiring Women today, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Just as you reflect back on your many years in technology engineering, supporting technology sales, any last closing advice that you would give other listeners of Inspiring Women?
I think maybe similar to what I said before. Personally, my suggestion would be don't believe in gender limitation, but believe in variety and the creativity. And I think there is limitation for human, for sure. And but there is also individual difference. So my personally, I think that we don't need to be a man, we don't need to be a woman either, but just be ourselves. That's what I believe in.
Well, it's certainly something that's worked out for you, and it's very encouraging to hear both your lived experience as well as those great words of advice. This has been an excellent Inspiring Women conversation. I have been speaking with Julia Chang, and Julia, thank you so much.
Thank you very much too.
This has been an episode of Inspiring Women with Laurie McGraw. Please subscribe, rate, and review. We are produced by Kate Cruz at Executive Podcast Solutions. More episodes can be found on inspiringwomen.show. I am Laurie McGraw, and thank you for listening. This has been an episode of Inspiring Women with Laurie McGraw. Please subscribe, rate, and review. We are produced by Kate Cruz at Executive Podcast Solutions. More episodes can be found on inspiringwomen.show. I am Laurie McGraw, and thank you for listening.